Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for AVG Business by Avast. And it's my honor to introduce a couple of speakers who are going to be presenting today's presentation. It's the 2017 Threat Assessment. But the most important part, this is a very technical session. We've got two very technical presenters. It is going to be a great session. Any questions you've got, please use the Q&A pod at the bottom. Type in your question. There are two moderators who are watching the webinar. We'll answer as many questions as we can as we go through, and if there's time permitting at the end, we'll ask our presenters to help out. If not, the questions are captured and we will follow through that way. The session is being recorded, which is especially pleasing to me because I know I'm going to want to watch it again. If you do want to watch it again, you just follow the same link that brought you here today, and that will take you to an on-demand recording. Now, the topics today, as I said, are going to be very technical. It's talking about the current malware and security trends, a very deep look at the current threats, and then attacking the problem. Now, we've got two presenters today. The two presenters are Greg Mosher. Greg's our VP of Engineering. He leads the product management and the engineering teams for our business products. I've known Greg for about 3 years. He's a subject matter expert. But most importantly today, he's got the subject matter expertise and he's got the ability to communicate that in a way that you walk away going, wow, I've just received a pile of knowledge. When I first met Greg, I had read a couple of white papers on DDoS attacks and how to defend against them and what the different policies and procedures are, and I was feeling pretty knowledgeable. And then Greg, in a 5-minute conversation, gave me more information about the attacks and how to neutralize them than a half day of reading a bunch of dry white papers. So, Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I've always respected your ability to communicate that knowledge quickly and easily, and that's what I'm expecting today. Our other presenter is Jan Sirmer. He's the perfect complement to Greg. He's also a subject matter expert. Now, he writes extensively. If you Google his name, man oh man, will you find things. He writes in blogs, he's quoted in magazine articles, and he's a very frequent conference presenter. But his real superhero powers are his ability to analyze and understand the various threats. Now, I've never met Jan. I've spoken to him once in a conference call, planning for this webinar, and just this morning as he came online. But I've certainly benefited from his work. In a previous role, I worked a lot with WordPress, and WordPress, unfortunately, is a huge target for attackers. And one of the weaknesses that Jan identified back probably 6 years ago was something that we were able to correct before our site got hit. So, Jan, I don't know you, but thank you for all your hard work, and I'm looking forward to this presentation. So, gentlemen, please take it away.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Hey guys, this is Greg Mosher. It looks like Jan and I have quite a bit to live up to given Andrew's build-up, but that's okay. We will try our best, no doubt. So it's good afternoon to everybody in Europe. It's morning here in the U.S., which is where I'm based right now. Going to jump into this real quick, and we're going to kind of go in soft. We're not going to immediately throw a whole bunch of script or a whole bunch of code or binary at you. We're going to talk about essentially, the threat landscape at a very high level, and I'm going to start you off with a really nice infographic that AVG and Avast seem to be pretty good at producing. And I like this. The reason why I wanted to start off with it is because I think it scopes the problem well. When we talk about malware and we talk about threats, really, our concerns is obviously bad guys, let's just call them that, bad guys, really getting access to our content, our intellectual property, stealing it, taking it from us, denying access to it, denying access to our resources that we need to have to do our jobs daily to be, creative and productive people. And this really, I think, paints a very kind of clean picture of that. It shows the ever-escalating amount of data that is out there at risk, and it shows the ever-escalating amount of connected devices, which is really the attack surface area for the bad guys. And so just based on the environment and the world that we live in, the problem space only gets more difficult as we go forward. And I want you to notice one thing, we will mention this in a little bit, is on the right side, talking about IoT devices. That is Internet of Things, and I think most of you are probably aware of what IoT is, at least, kind of from a cursory marketing standpoint. At one point in time, IoT, everybody said, oh, they're great, but they're a security problem. It was still pretty theoretical. Well, we can show it's gone beyond the theoretical now. IoT is being attacked, and it is a real problem. So we're going to discuss that going forward this morning. All right, let me flip forward. Cybersecurity is in the news everywhere. We see it all the time. It's a daily occurrence now. I mean, if you do Google News and go to technology, sometimes as much as half of what's out there is on some sort of security threat. But this is great. Most of it's high level. Most of it's kind of big attacks against big companies or very theoretical, sort of issues, or they throw out lots of just huge numbers. And I know, our partners and certainly your customers are probably saying, okay, that's great, but how does that affect me? Really, what is it that I have to worry about on the ground? Do I have to worry about somebody, getting into my network and downloading all my movies, or, what is it that I'm worried about? And we know, I think you guys know, in our last sort of more sales-focused webinar, we asked some questions about how many people were affected by ransomware and basically how many of our partners had to deal with it, and the numbers were huge. And it reflects something we certainly know. 2016 was the year of ransomware. There's no doubt about it. The main concern, though, is 2017 is starting off to not look any different. Ransomware is still our most significant problem, really affecting small businesses and affecting our partners that are having to deal with the small businesses. This is probably not news to you. Maybe it's just more confirmation of the fact. But really, when we saw ransomware take off was very much, the beginning part of last year. And it's just remained at a very high level since then. We saw really a 300% increase in ransomware in 2016 over 2015. That continues to increase. FBI, these are some of the kind of the real hard numbers that we've been able to find. There's less hard numbers about 2017 because it's still new. But just in the first part of 2016, there was 10 times more ransomware essentially cost to businesses and consumers in Q1 2016 than there was in all of 2015. So we can see the escalation. In 2016, current estimates are, the numbers are still being processed, but current estimates are ransomware was well over $1 billion problem. And really the other kind of main cyber criminal activity for leeching money or trying to actually, steal from essentially the community at one time was banking trojans. This has been in the past couple of years. Ransomware is now 3 times more prevalent than banking trojans. We can see that in all of our numbers. So showing also the explosive growth that we saw during the exact same time. Again, the growth hasn't necessarily continued, but the numbers have remained high. The growth has been a little bit more at a constant, steady state, which I take as the fact is that the ransomware writers built a number of basically very, very healthy products out there that they have then since leveraged. And Jan's going to get into some of that in his talk about how once ransomware is released, the authors continue to basically create variants and continue to campaign against essentially their victims to make the ransomware not only long-lived but really overall through its lifetime quite successful. So the biggest impacts, what are they? Really, where do we see it? And this is a study that's actually by a company called BitSight. And when we really looked at it and said, okay, let's get through all of the real numbers. What's out there? We hear, okay, there's this huge growth. We hear these huge percentages. We hear all of this stuff. Who's really having a material effect, or who's actually really receiving a material damage? So the numbers are not as massive as maybe as what kind of gets thrown around, but they're still very, very real. And I actually believe, quite strongly in these numbers. Looking at education, particularly lower education, we're now seeing, it's 13%, probably more likely 15+% at this point in time, have received material loss from ransomware in 2016 alone. This really goes, and this speaks to either monetary loss or significant resource time value loss. And if you think about education, they're not really generating revenue, so this is also significant time value. So, we as service providers and as technical people, we tend to run into it a lot more, but these are the real numbers of what shows up as far as people actually receiving, material loss. There is other more recent studies which saying from a government standpoint, we're probably not getting a full view. And the fact is that governments actually really experienced at least 23% of all local government entities in the U.S. have actually experienced ransomware and received some sort of loss from them. So it does add up in the end. You can see why it's such a big impact too, and why it's such a big concern for us in the security industry. So, to be clear on this, ransomware is not only about what is ransom from essentially the victims. Ransomware is also very much, it impacts, when it impacts businesses, it's impacting essentially people's time. It's impacting material loss when it comes to data, when it comes to intellectual property, when it comes to anything that is needed to run that business. And we do know that whenever we look at really all of the ransomware attacks, the largest impact is really loss of income and services for small businesses. But one other part on there I want you to notice is all of the Ps, the PII, the PHI, the PFI. This is ransomware where now that it's infected actually has the ability to have access to all sorts of various private information as well. It can leach all of that stuff if needed. And so this is where ransomware is now getting on machines where it should be very controlled and people should not be getting onto these machines where there is potentially compliance issues. So that also has a huge impact from ransomware, getting onto the various devices in small businesses. So a little bit more about how is it being delivered today. Now, I've been doing this off and on since the early 90s, and so I've seen essentially about every type of malware that's out there, over time. And I can tell you what, sometimes it's cyclical, normally not. Well, we're seeing some cycles now. Really on this, I think maybe a lot of you have probably said, okay, phishing, that's probably more a 5 to 6, 7 year ago problem. No, it's really come back in a big way. And there's a number of reasons behind it, which I'll talk in just a second. But, we've seen a massive increase in the number of phishing emails that have been detected, eightfold during 2016. And right now, we've looked at basically our data and we've compared against some other studies. 93% of these phishing emails right now are delivering ransomware. And again, Jan will show you a number of the campaigns that are run as part of the ransomware, basically rollout. And you can see the example that we're going to use, it all starts with phishing emails. Now, what else are they doing? Well, exploit kits are still there. I think maybe a lot of you know a little bit about exploit kits. Exploit kits are primarily were used for delivering malware mainly through the web and delivering through the web through vulnerable machines. This is where it came, the big push that you've got to patch your environments became so important. And really, the big daddy of them all over the past couple of years has been an exploit kit called Angler. This is something that could actually go and be purchased by the bad guys. It was part of essentially the cyber criminal economy. And Angler itself, kind of lucky for us, actually really went away in 2016. I don't think we know the exact details. It's hard to say. Likely they made enough money and decided to get out. Some possibly were broken up or some of the different authorities maybe have gotten a little close, but they shut down shop. So that's actually a good news. The bad news is it then gets filled in by a whole bunch of other competitors. Again, it's a business on the dark side. And so we now see any number of exploit kits out there that are still being used. I will say their effectiveness has been waning some, though, because they're mostly based on older vulnerabilities. So as we get patched up, as more people get Windows 10, it starts to affect the effectiveness of these. But still, people put machines online that aren't completely patched, and there's some cases where machines can't be patched because of some of the older applications they have. So they are still out there. So what's old is new again, part number 2. Again, another thing that is way back, maybe beyond, most of your experience with malware, but it is Microsoft Office macros. During the 90s, macro viruses became all of the rage. Basically, Microsoft built its own little, operating system into Microsoft Office, all based on Visual Basic Script. And it was just a playground for the bad guys for writing malware. Well, Microsoft closed most of those holes, but they actually left enough capability open that the macros can actually be used for delivering other types of malware to your machine. And so kind of following the exploit kit model, we now are seeing a number of macro virus kits. Again, available out there in the criminal or in the cyber criminal economy. You can go out and purchase any of these to use as part of your deployment. Matter of fact, one of them, a popular one we see called AK Builder, we've tracked, we've seen AK Builder deliver 50 different strains of malware. So you can see how effective this can be. This is just simply a distribution mechanism for malware, and we do see these really quite prevalent in our ransomware spread. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second on ransomware. That was kind of the high level on that, and I want to talk about one more thing, and I think this is really important, particularly with some of the news that's come out. And I'm really referring to, I will encourage you at the end of this presentation to go to our blog site. As noted, Jan, who's going to speak in a minute, he's very active on our blog site, and we have a number of contributors inside of Avast that provide a great bit of information. And with Mobile World Congress being just a couple of weeks ago, there's quite a bit of information coming on about IoT. And so I wanted to kind of raise this up because I think this is maybe something that's a little less obvious. I think most people have dealt some with ransomware, but certainly some of the vulnerabilities in IoT are less known. And we know IoT is vulnerable, and we've got a great example of that. There is a botnet called the Mirai botnet, and it was behind some of the biggest denial of service attacks that we've ever seen, and it occurred last fall. Now, the most notable thing about this was that this botnet is constructed mostly of IoT devices, not of, say, PCs or laptops or Macs or anything. It's actually composed of things like routers and security cameras and printers, things that can exist inside your businesses as well as at home. And what they did with this botnet was that they actually attacked and went directly after Dyn, which is a big DNS service, and that took down Twitter, Amazon, Reddit, and a number of others. You probably heard about this in the news, but this was a massive botnet built mostly of IoT devices, which is obviously has really, really raised the threat level when it comes to IoT. Now, in preparation for Mobile World Congress on this, Avast went out and did a study. We did a study based off of a lot of our data, and we also worked with another company called Shodan.io. And for those of you that don't know, Mobile World Congress is held in Barcelona every year, about this time of year. And so we did a study of the country of Spain, which is a moderate-sized Western European country. You'd expect to have lots of electronic devices. And this is what we found, really 5.3 million vulnerable IoT devices out there. Remember, IoT devices, anything that basically can get an IP and can connect to the internet. And many of these devices, they're not, this is not something, it's not a PC. This is not a laptop. It's not even a tablet. It's not even a mobile phone. These are other things that just simply connect to the internet as part of their service. Of this, we found 150,000 hackable webcams. These are webcams that can be hacked, where somebody can now start streaming the video directly back to themselves of what they're seeing on the webcam. The next stat is just more of an interest. Almost 80,000 vulnerable smart kettles and coffee machines. I guess I'm a little bit of a Luddite. I never really thought about that we needed smart kettles, but there you go. It is out there. But probably the biggest number here is over 400,000 devices that are using an open telnet protocol. This is the exact protocol that was compromised to build the Mirai botnet. So within the country of Spain itself, that's your potential botnet right there. I mean, that itself, a botnet of over 400,000 IoT devices is a huge botnet, and you could just simply have that within the country of Spain if you really wanted. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to jump into the poll question. And Andrew, I guess I'll ask this. We'd like for everybody to fill this out. But we are looking at how many times a week are you dealing with a malware issue? And Andrew, I'll shut up in case you want to add any more to that.
Sure. The only thing I need to do, we'll leave it up for 5 seconds, give everybody a chance to select one of the radio buttons, then click Submit, and then we'll show you the results. And I think I've stalled long enough. Let's have a quick peek at the results. How many times a week are you dealing with a malware issue? Wow, 50% once a week. Wow, Greg, take it over.
So it's, I guess, really with these numbers, that probably looks about right for me. And I could see 5 or more. I mean, that's tough. That means you're spending most of your time dealing with malware at that point. So very, very interesting numbers. So thank you for that. All right, we're going to step forward, and we're now going to get into types of ransomware, and I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Jan Sirmer. He's going to run through. Again, this is going to be very technical. I will interject a little bit to try to just summarize and get some of the key points, but I think Jan does a great job in presenting some of this technical information. So Jan, take it away.
Hello, Greg. Thank everybody. So hello, everybody. I would like to tell something about ransomware. So as Greg mentioned, ransomware is a big issue in this world. I think the biggest problem, the group of the authors are the real professionals. Those guys are really skilled. They know what they are doing, and unfortunately, they are earning a lot of money from the victims. So the most people think that exists only one type of the ransomware, the crypto ransomware. That's not true. In fact, we have 2 types of the ransomware. Number one is focusing mostly on the mobile. It's called local ransomware. It's affecting the Android, iOS, Windows Phone devices. Actually, it's based on the browser locker. That principle was not so successful on the computers because it was really easy to get rid of it. But anyway, the authors earn a lot of money on it. So the most known representative of the local ransomware are the Color, FBI locker, and the Phobos. Actually, the Phobos is very interesting because it started as a banker, and now it's moved a bit more to the ransomware. The other type is a crypto ransomware, which is the most infamous, is the Loki. And these days there is also the Nemocut and Kerber. The crypto ransomware is targeting mostly the Windows, and it encrypts the data of the victims, and they demand a big ransom for decrypting those data. So, at first, look at the representative of a mobile local ransomware, the Color. So it's really hard for the victims to notice there is something wrong, because it's very unexpected that if you download the application which pretending to be, for example, the Google Play, that something happened on your device. But fortunately for us, the authors of the malware, not only the ransomware, are leaving some clue for us, which help us to categorize or cluster the malware. For example, in the Color locker, we are able to find the command and control servers, like in this case it was the police mobile DNC server, which help us to cluster the whole malware to the one group and help us to deal with this type of the attacks much better. So what actually happens, it's very similar to the browser locker. The device is infected with the ransomware, and it locks up the screen and shows us the warning that your device has been blocked, and they demand some ransom for decrypting the victim's data.
Yep, and so I mean, so this I think is a clear explanation to that ransomware is not all the PC type of ransomware, and certainly what happens with this is just denial of basically the entire device. If you don't have anything important on the device, maybe isn't so concerning, but if you've got some data on there that's important, it is. And they'll do it to a device and lock it all the way up because they know it's your secondary device. You probably still have a computer that you can actually go pay them with. So, okay, thanks, Jan.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, now let's look on the crypto ransomware. I think the most infamous, it's a Loki. Actually, this ransomware group is active since end of 2015. We can see the big cooperation between 2 groups of the malware authors. The group which is behind the ransomware itself, and the group which is behind the Necurs botnet, which is responsible for creating the spam campaigns and spreading the Loki ransomware. So we can see the Loki spam emails contains there are different spam campaigns. We can see the different script languages. There are regularly the script changes like obfuscation, etc. And we can see the guys behind the Loki are probably the same group, or a lot of people is same as the group from the Dridex banker or Tesla Crypt. And again, there's a really close connection with Necurs botnet, because the Necurs botnet was also responsible for spreading the Dridex banker. So they really make big changes every day, or almost every day, because they try to avoid the AV detection. It's really hard for us to deal with this type of spam and malware.
Yeah, that's right. And this is really what we think of when most people think of ransomware. This is ransomware that affects your PC. And one note about the close connection with the Necurs botnet. Really, this is, you can almost think about like this is cooperation between companies to achieve something. It's almost business development for the bad guys. So we'll see more on this in just a minute. Actually, Rian, why don't you show your next slide that shows the different campaigns and more the business nature of ransomware.
So when you look on the campaigns, in the last year and part of this year, we discovered 8 different spam campaigns by the Necurs botnet. Of course, there's everything started with email, but they moved from using the documents with the macro, which contains the Visual Basic script, which works as a downloader for a binary. They moved to another campaigns using the zip, including the JavaScript or Windows script file or link file. Then the authors moved back to the documents with the macros, but in this case, it contains the link file with the PowerShell downloader. And the latest campaign, which was discovered like 2 weeks ago, there is an email which contains the direct link to the Dropbox, where is the zip file with the JavaScript inside, which works as a basic downloader for the Loki binaries. So you can see the whole email is very simple. They just parse the email address and try to use the name of the email address to make it more familiar with you and convince the victim to click and download the attachment and infect the computer. Well, in the peak, we saw over 3 million spam emails containing the Loki binaries or the Loki downloaders per day.
Yep. So this really is as I noted, this shows the business aspect of ransomware, and a lot of these changes, these different campaigns, is to keep the security professionals kind of on their toes. Once we see something and we understand it, it's pretty easy for us to stop. So they're constantly changing, and this is not only for the antivirus companies, the various cybersecurity companies, but also even Microsoft themselves when it comes to the Windows environment. They will see this stuff, track it, stop it, and clean it up. So it's a constant cat and mouse game, but it shows you this is not fire and forget. There's somebody behind each one of these pieces of ransomware, and it's their business, so they're going to adjust and move. Thanks, Jan.
So when we look on some examples of the Loki downloader, you can see mostly they are using the highly obfuscated scripts. The variant 1, it was the highly obfuscated Visual Basic script. This part of the code is from the partly deobfuscated script. And we can see there is just encrypted URL, which is the hex site misused by the authors of the botnet to spread the Loki binaries. And the main reason for it, that's because there exists something called affiliate program. So the authors of the Necurs botnet earn money from the work of the authors of the ransomware. And we know the take rate of the spam emails is really low, but the number of the emails is really huge. So even with this obfuscation, they are able to infect a lot of people and convert their effort to the monetization of the spam. So now let's look slightly more to the executable analysis. I think it will be more interesting for you. Actually, our P-analyst spent a lot of time with the analyzing of the Loki binaries. The problem is because there is a big evolution and differences between the two variants of the Loki. Actually, the second variant is called Zepto. We can see in the variant 1, it was really easy. There was hard-coded IP address of command and control server, which help us to block it much faster. They try to use the persistent method when they write something in the registry key, mostly to the run key, etc. The biggest difference in the version 2, so they moved from the executable file to the YAML file. We can see this variant 2 is called Zepto. That's because the string Zepto was found in the variant 2, and also the suffix of the files, of the encrypted files, was Zepto. So they start using the domain generation algorithm to generate the command and control servers addresses, which is much harder for the analyst to block, to detect and block. And also they start using the better obfuscation or encryption of the files, because mostly in the version 2 there is the public RSA key, which is stored on the command and control server, or in the offline variant it's stored in the file itself, but it's highly encrypted. So it's really hard for us to deobfuscate and analyze these binaries.
Yeah, and this just shows, I think, the progression over time. It shows you how the ransomware authors, like I said, just like anybody that's building a software product, they're going to learn things and the product is going to improve over time. The other note here is that unlike, way back whenever we actually had viruses and things propagated slowly, in today's world it's connected. Once they go with a new variant and it just goes live, it can start infecting machines, in a matter of, seconds. It just immediately shows up. So you can kind of understand and see how, really this is how it shows, how it looks like we're just having tons of new malware all the time. A lot of times it's actually malware that's doing kind of proven things, but it just looks drastically different and we almost have to treat it as completely new malware. Okay?
So another big difference between the variant 1 and variant 2 was the file encryption preparation. In the first variant, they just try to be persistent on the victim's computer, so they have a lot of time to encrypt all important data. But it helped the AVs to make the behavior detection based on it, to help us to protect our users much better. But there was a big chance in the version 2, they start using something which is called the priority file list. They usually set up the priority of the files that should be encrypted first on the file type and on the file size of the file. So they, at the beginning, they're encrypting the really important files which are small, like the Bitcoin wallet, the certificates, or for example the files which are important for some projects like the AutoCAD files. And actually there's one more big difference between the different variants. The first two versions of the Loki were able to encrypt less than 200 files. But in one of the latest variants, the Odin, we already noticed they are able to encrypt over 460 file types, which is really dangerous for the victims because they're still evolving this malware. So we can still see the big progress of the authors. So, yeah, sorry. So when we look to the configuration structure, we can, so when we look at configuration structure, we can see what's very important for us, like the reverse engineering help us to combat the malware. When we reverse engineer the Loki binaries, we can see they are using the affiliate program, which helps them to cooperate with the Necurs botnet authors, because it's much easier for the authors of the Loki or the ransomware in general to focus only on developing the ransomware itself and not spreading that malware, because it will cost them some more expensive, like creating the botnet, etc. So they can just use the affiliate program to spread their work between two groups, the authors of the ransomware and the authors of the botnet. And also we can see in the configuration there is an exclusion of the Russian machine, which gives us a clue about the origin of the authors. So, okay, I see there is, okay, I'm sorry, we just have two slides.
I think we had a slide out of order then. That's okay, go on.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for it, everybody. So the origin of authors. So usually the authors add a function to skip encryption and terminate on Russian machines. They're using 3 different API functions. So they are checking the system default language, the user default language, and the user default UI language, which helps them to terminate the encryption on the Russian machines and stay under the radar of the Russian police or the. Maybe Greg, can you add something? And I will come back to
the So just to go back on this is that with some of the reverse engineering, what we actually get is we learn not only about kind of some of the motivation, the way that maybe the business aspect of the ransomware works at a higher level. You saw the fact is that they use affiliates. This is how they actually are able to distribute and how they know how to pay their affiliates. We also get to detect things like this where maybe they're based, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, if they're trying to not infect Russian machines, it's very likely that they are based in Russia. The Russian authorities are actually very, very good at, essentially policing inside their own borders. And if there's something affecting Russian citizens, they really have proven to be pretty good about taking down cybersecurity or cyber criminal rings. In this case, it's obvious they're trying to avoid that to maybe stay underneath the radar a little bit longer. So these are some of the unique things that we also find during reverse engineering. It's not just for trying to detect, but it also helps us understand the motivation a little bit more, and maybe it can give us some insights on how we can detect new versions of it much better. Okay?
Okay, so when I mentioned it's really hard to fight with the ransomware, one of the problems is the file encryption method. The authors of the ransomware were developing how to encrypt file to be almost impossible to decrypt it. So they are using usually the cipher, which is hard-coded in the binary itself, but the cipher is encrypted by the private key of the RSA, which to be decrypted must be, they need to obtain the public key from the CNC servers. So in fact, it's almost impossible for the AVs to decrypt the encrypted files unless there is some mistake on the side of the authors of the ransomware, or there are some leak keys. Of course, we are able to decrypt the older version or some different types of the ransomware, but it's still harder and harder. So we have to really focus on the detecting the ransomware really fast. So
yeah.
Authors, to avoid the behavior detection, they are really changing like the file extension, because at the beginning they just used the log key, or in the version 2 was Zepto, Odin, and later we discovered that they start using the names of the Greek gods, the Egypt gods, etc. Also, they start changing the help instruction file format, and they are really trying to change everything is possible in the binaries or in the drop data or drop files to avoid the behavior detection.
So it's clear this is showing the increasing sophistication. And one thing I'll say here about, particularly about the ransomware that is now, it's pervasive enough, and you can tell there's a sophisticated enough organization behind it that they can really use, a command and control server to actually help facilitate the encryption. A lot of the ransomware, a lot of the lower end ransomware, and certainly some of the earlier ransomware, as Jan noted, contained a lot of the encryption keys, were just really obfuscated inside the ransomware. From this, we could through our reverse engineering and analysis, we could pick those out, and we could actually come up with really decryption. There's still ransomware that comes out like that, and again, I encourage you to go to our blogs. Actually, with the information we have out there on ransomware, we also have links to download free tools directly from Avast that will decrypt any number of ransomware infections. But in the case of like this with the newest versions of Locky, where they're getting keys from a command and control server, it becomes almost impossible to decrypt. So this is just simply an escalation in cybercrime is what it comes down to. Okay, Jan.
So unfortunately for us, like the AVs, and sometimes even for the victim, the authors of the ransomware really pay an attention to the details. At the beginning, usually the ransom fee was like 0.3 bit. like the
I think we may have
hospital.
lost. I think we lost your audio for a second. I'll just repeat, Jan. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's anywhere between a half to 3 Bitcoin is typical, but sometimes it's more dependent on if they can determine who they've infected. Okay, go on, Jan. I think you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry for it. So usually the website with the wallet and the decryptor are hidden on the darknet. So using the Bitcoin and the darknet helps the author to stay in the anonymity, or they are somehow protected from the government or AVs. So every single detail makes us much harder to find the authors or to deal with this ransomware. So it can see like the authors of the ransomware are a step ahead, but we are also developing the new method how to detect it or block the ransomware much faster and react proactively. So we are able to interact even with the new, when they change the website, we are able to detect the website itself, like not only on the web address, but even on some other clues for us, which can give us a clue this is the ransomware, part of the ransomware.
Yeah. And I think this is just from an example. I think this shows kind of, like I said, the business sophistication. These guys will go out of their way to help you spend money with them. So that's just kind of the key point behind that. And they put a lot of effort into the payment side, as you expect, and therefore it is a business, clearly. Okay.
So we mentioned the Loki authors are cooperating with the authors of the Necurs botnet. The Necurs botnet has over 5 million infected PC based on the info from the Malware tech. This is the largest botnet in the world. This botnet spreads mainly the Loki and the Dridec, so you can see there is like a visible connection between the authors. And the most of the PCs is infected through the nuclear exploit kit. Basically, the victim visits some website which is hacked or infected. Through the exploit kit, it's infected the PC itself, and then the computer is misused to send the spam emails and spread the ransomware and monetize it for the authors of the botnet.
Yeah. Again, key takeaway, this is cooperation between different cybercrime business entities. They can work together, and it makes them even a bigger problem and makes it more successful. So that's this, again, not individual, kids sitting in somebody's basement. These are real criminal businesses. So
let me just summarize the whole idea of the ransomware, this presentation. So the authors are probably the same or closely connected to Dridec and Tesla group. We know these groups are, or the most of the people in these groups are the Russian, because of CNC servers location, exclusion of Russian machines. We have some clues about the Dridec, etc. The Loki is the big player, maybe the biggest player on the ransomware scene. There's the huge email campaigns. Because, as I said before, over 3 million hits per day, which is a really big number even with a low take rate. The Loki ransomware has a solid development, and we know the authors are really skilled programmers, and they can react really fast on the new AV industry detections. They really test us the same as we test them. They are really good reverse engineers, so they can really, modify their ransomware to prevent be detected by the AVs. The malware, like the Loki, can work in the online or offline mode, which helps the authors to monetize it even better. What's actually really important, the Necurs botnet spreads mainly the Loki and the Dridec. And I think what is really important for the users, you can see two types of ransomware. Local ransomware is mostly on the mobile because of the technical limitation of the crypto ransomware on the devices. And the crypto ransomware is on the computers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan. That was great. Andrew, I think you got a poll question?
Yep, we have a poll question here. What is the average time you spend resolving a malware issue? Many of you said you deal with one issue, half of you deal with an issue a week, Most of you deal with multiple issues per week. Let us know what the average time you spend resolving a malware issue. I'll leave the question up for a few more seconds. Let you select one of the radio buttons and click Submit, and then we'll have a look at the results. For those who've asked, the sample size is approximately 50 people who are attending the presentation. Wow, that's a lot of time lost in business looking after malware issues.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's kind of what we see. So part of our role is to try to make sure that you guys can spend less time on this and more focused on your business by trying to take care of this stuff as automatically as possible for you. Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew. We're getting near the end, but I do have a couple of more things to share with you guys, and you know, you are aware now that AVG Business, as you can see by our logo, is part of Avast, and that's actually a really good thing. That's two really great technical security companies coming together to actually really protect our users. And one of the real strengths that we're leveraging is our combined user base is now very significant. We do have a very large consumer side, obviously, but that really benefits our business side as well. And the way it does is the fact that we have really over 400 million users worldwide, and they're very geographically spread. One of the nice kind of synergies that we had between Avast and AVG coming together is that we didn't have a whole lot of geo overlap. AVG was pretty much prominently represented in the English-speaking countries, and Avast was represented in kind of the non-English speaking countries. So why this is good is because all of our endpoints essentially act as sensors for us. They see malware, or they see something brand new that maybe has some very strange behavior to it, and it all reports back to our main automated system. As a matter of fact, we actually rely as much on our own as we do, say, sort of the internal kind of threat sharing that goes on between malware companies. We actually receive as much malware, unique pieces of malware through our own clients every day as we do through other sources. So this is really, it's what it really means in a nutshell is that when something new comes out, we typically see it extremely fast, within seconds or minutes, and it's just simply because we have that worldwide coverage. And we bring it in, we analyze it, and we're able to deal with it and remove it faster than anybody out there. Now, coming together, our 2017 release of AV is really a combined release between Avast and AVG. No longer going forward are we really having separate antiviruses. It doesn't make sense to actually build out separate antivirus engines and have separate, kind of research or anything. We've come together to bring the best of both worlds. And we do think that we are better together. There's no doubt. As you could hear from Jan is obviously, a significant contributor to our Threat Labs research within Avast. And, we've got tons and tons of smart guys just like Jan looking at malware every single day and making really smart decisions on how we can not only stop what we know, but stuff that we don't know. Now, a couple of key protection features that we have in the AV as it's been released is behavioral shield. That's easy for me to say, and I'm highlighting this because there's actually a great blog out there by Andrei Velchek, our CTO, that really kind of describes these features in depth. So I encourage you to go look at that on the blog site. But behavioral shield is some technology that we brought very much from AVG. We've enhanced it some with some technology from Avast. And what this really allows for us to do is actually understand the various forms of malware when they first are delivered out from the dark web. And with this, we're able to determine and say, okay, this is in fact a piece of malware very, very early on, before we even really know or before we've even done the analysis on it to determine the fact that it is. And we're getting better and better at that. And this is what really allows that very large sensor net, when it sees some malware, early on, that we're able to now call it malware very, very early in its life stage and protect our users. The other thing related to more on the IoT side that we are thinking more definitely on from the malware side to more the different devices and the vulnerable devices out there. Our Wi-Fi inspector, whenever you are running, our antivirus on, say, a PC, in your local network, it has the ability, it will go out and look at all of your connected devices, and will look at the various IoT devices that are out there and inform you and give you remediation steps on any of those that are vulnerable. And you can see having that would really, really help prevent a lot of the problems, say, like building the Mirai botnet. If we'd had that, I think, very prevalent on everybody's, network that had IoT devices, maybe we could have made a big dent in that. So we just simply have to do a better job and get our software out to more customers worldwide. So I think that is, for us, I think that's about it. I think we're going to end with another poll question. So Andrew?
Yep, thank you very much, Greg. That was a great presentation. Jan, wow, I'm going to be stealing a lot of your slides to use in our marketing material. That was great information being shared. I had high expectations from the two of you, and I think you both delivered. So thank you very much. Thanks also to Charles Payne, who was the other moderator online. We managed to close down all the questions as they came in. So we've responded to everybody. So thank you very much. Again, if you wish to watch this recording on demand, all you need to do is follow the same link that brought you here today. So if you want to share that video or if you want to watch it again, follow that link. It will take you back. Greg multiple times mentioned have a look at the Avast blogs. Here's the URL here, blog.avast.com. You'll find a wealth of information, and you'll also find those decryption tools that have been released by Avast to help you help your customers. So with that, I'll bring the webinar to a close. Thank you very much to our two presenters. Thanks to the moderator, but most of all, thanks to the people who attended.